20 forgotten 80s action and comedy movies.
Meathead. What did he say? I think he said meathead.
10 1980s teen comedies that you forgot about. Sure, we all remember Ferris Bueller's Day Off, The Breakfast Club, and Fast Times at Ridgemount High. Those are classics that are carved into pop culture history. But what about the comedies that fell through the cracks? The movies that didn't become iconic, but still deserve their moment in the spotlight. Today, we're diving into the forgotten, underrated teen comedies of the 80s, the hidden gems that time seemed to forget.
Why don't we forget this whole thing and pretend this never happened, okay?
First up, we've got 3 O'Clock High, a quirky comedy with a unique twist. It's about Jerry Mitchell, your average high schooler who accidentally ticks off the school's new bully, Buddy Revell, who I always thought looked like a cross between Arnold Schwarzenegger and the INXS singer Michael Hutchins. Anyway, Buddy declares that they'll fight after school at exactly 3 o'clock. What follows is a hilarious day of Jerry trying every ridiculous scheme to avoid the showdown. Think High Noon, but in high school. And then the ending showdown and aftermath does not disappoint. This one deserved more attention than it got. Next is One Crazy Summer, starring John Cusack as an aspiring cartoonist who spends his summer on Nantucket. This one came out before Better Off Dead. Well, his vacation takes a turn when he gets caught up in a zany mission to help a girl, played by Demi Moore, save her grandfather's home from being taken over by greedy developers. Think the Goonies without the treasure maps and middle schoolers. Packed with wild characters, wild antics, and even some animated sequences, this one delivers laughs and charm.
Do you really think I'm punk? Wow, that's outrageous. I mean,
Now we have Girls Just Want to Have Fun. Sarah Jessica Parker, who I had a huge crush on in this movie, plays Janie, a teenager with dreams of becoming a pro dancer. Along with her rebellious best friend, played by Helen Hunt, she sneaks out to audition for a spot on her favorite dance show. It's full of 80s fashion, catchy music, and feel-good energy. Plus, it's got Shannon Doherty in one of her earliest movie roles. An all-around fun, nostalgic trip.
that sure is a great trip.
Here's one that's kind of way out there, Meatballs Part 2. Now, the original's a classic with Bill Murray. This bizarre sequel takes things in a completely different direction. It's a summer camp comedy, sure, but this time it involves a group of misfit campers, a boxing match, and a space alien named Meathead. It's absolutely ridiculous and not for everyone, but if you're in the mood for something weird and funny, it's worth checking out. I actually liked it. At least I did back in the 80s. Next, ever wondered what happens when a stockbroker hides out in high school? Well, that's the premise of Hiding Out, where John Cryer plays an adult on the run from the mob pretending to be a teenager. The mix of comedy, action, and Cryer's charming performance makes this an underrated gem worth revisiting. Next is The Last American Version. Feels like a raunchy comedy on the surface, but it has a surprising amount of heart. It tells the tale of 3 teenage dudes navigating love, heartbreak, and growing up. And the ending is a bittersweet, making it stand out from other teen comedies of the era. Next, we have a gender-bending comedy with something to say. Just One of the Guys. It follows Terry, a teenage journalist who poses as a guy to prove her talent. The mix of comedy, awkward moments, and a progressive take on women's rights makes this one worth rewatching. Zapped. It's the definition of 80s absurdity. A nerdy science whiz gains telekinetic powers after a lab accident and uses them for, well, teenage mischief. Scott Baio stars in this over-the-top and unapologetically goofy comedy. Sure, it's cheesy, but that's part of the charm. And it's got his pal Buddy, a.k.a. Willie Ames, from Charles in Charge.
All right, let's rock. 5, 6, 7, 8.
Number 9, long before Keanu Reeves became Neo and was driving buses around, he starred in the wild teen comedy The Night Before. The movie follows Winston, a nerdy high schooler who loses his date and his memory during prom night. The next morning, he finds himself in the middle of a sketchy part of town with no idea how he got there. Dude, where's his car? It's really funny as Winston retraces his steps and tries to save his date, played by Lori Loughlin. Keanu's comedic timing is spot on in this hidden gem. Finally, we have Lucas. Title character played by Corey Haim is a lonely high school genius who falls in love with the new girl in town, Maggie, played by Carrie Green, fresh off the Goonies. Winona Ryder and Carlos Estevez also star. Now, you could argue this 1986 coming-of-age film is more drama than comedy, but all the best teen films are spliced with a bit of that drama. After all, what is high school without the drama? So there you have it. 10 forgotten teen comedies from the 80s that deserve another chance. Whether it's quirky romance, surreal humor, or offbeat hijinks, these movies have something for everyone. Which ones are you excited to check out? Which ones did you watch and didn't like? Did I miss some of your favorites?
Wrong answer.
How about the light?
Come out to the coast, we'll get together, have a few laughs.
Forgotten 80s action films starring big-time stars. The 80s were the golden age of action movies. Think Die Hard, Lethal Weapon, RoboCop, Predator. Massive hits that still get talked about today. But what about the action films that didn't quite make the same impact? Some of those featured the biggest stars of the decade, Schwarzenegger, Stallone, Norris, Eastwood, but for one reason or another, they've faded into obscurity. In this video, we're looking at 10 forgotten action films from the 80s that starred some of the biggest names in Hollywood. Get ready for explosions, high-stakes shootouts, and some truly wild plot lines. Let's jump in. We're going to start off with a trio of films from the king of 80s action, Arnold Schwarzenegger. Number 1, Red Sonja.
I will tell the future in your entrails, Red Woman!
I know my future. You have none.
Yeah! Well done, Sonia!
Fresh off the Terminator and his Conan films, Arnold Schwarzenegger returned to sword and sorcery action in Red Sonja. He plays Calidor, a warrior aiding the title character Red Sonja, played by Brigitte Nielsen, in her quest to defeat an evil queen with a magical talisman. While it had all the makings of another Conan-type hit, it flopped, and even Arnold later called it one of his worst movies. Still, it's a campy, over-the-top fantasy that deserves a second look. A year later came Raw Deal, where Arnold wasn't just battling mythical villains in the 80s, he also played a tough-as-nails FBI agent in Raw Deal. He stars as Mark Kaminsky, a disgraced former FBI agent who goes undercover to take down the Chicago mob. Unlike Commando or The Running Man, this one was more of a grounded crime thriller type movie. It lacked the over-the-top action that made his biggest hit so memorable. Maybe that's why it's not so memorable. Finally, from Schwarzenegger, we have Red Heat from 1988. This is the film that asks what happens when you pair Arnold Schwarzenegger with Jim Belushi in a buddy cop film. Well, that's Red Heat for you. Arnold plays a tough Soviet police officer sent to the US to track down a ruthless Russian criminal. The film had a few solid action sequences and a memorable Cold War era premise, but it got overshadowed by other buddy cop movies, like Lethal Weapon and 48 Hours, which were much better films. Now on to the other big 80s action star, Stallone, with Lock Up in 1989. By this time in the late 80s, Stallone was riding high off Rambo and Rocky, but Lock Up didn't make the same impact. He plays a model prisoner who's sent to a brutal maximum security prison by a vengeful warden, played by the always dependable Donald Sutherland. The film features some intense action and prison break drama, but it never quite became a classic. Then there's Black Eagle. That's with Van Damme. Right around the time Bloodsport was making him a martial arts icon, Jean-Claude Van Damme played the villain in Black Eagle. The film follows a CIA agent tracking down a top-secret laser weapon, while Van Damme's character, a KGB assassin, is sent to stop him. It has some great fight scenes, but it lacked the energy of Van Damme's later hits, and I guess people didn't really like seeing him as the villain. Sixth on the list is a film I'm sure a lot of people never heard of. The Chuck Norris film Hero and Terror from 1988.
Dan O'Brien met a cop's worst enemy. Fear.
She's beautiful.
He thought the past was behind him. He thought he could still be a good cop. He thought the terror was dead.
Something's wrong. What is it?
The nightmare's back.
There's nothing wrong with being afraid, O'Brien. You came up against a monster.
3 years ago, Simon Moon slaughtered 22 women, but 12 more were killed by copycats.
The MO on this girl is exactly the same as Simon Moon's.
Simon Moon is supposed to be dead, Sal.
Nothing so evil could die so easily.
Danny, is Simon Moon alive?
Hero, is the terror back?
I wish they'd stop that hero crap.
Why are you letting it bother you so much?
Because it's making me out to be something I'm not.
You said he was dead.
I said supposed to be dead. There's no doubt in my mind. It has to be Simon Moon. He's there.
Norris had plenty of hits in the 80s, but Hero and Tara, well, that wasn't one of them. Not like Missing in Action or the Delta Force films. This is more of a psychological thriller than a straight-up action flick, with Norris playing a cop trying to stop a serial killer who's returned from the dead. Or so it seems. It's a different kind of Norris movie, and that might be why it's forgotten. Number 7 is Pink Cadillac, which I think is one of Clint Eastwood's worst films ever.
Alrighty then.
Recognize this woman?
Elvis Presley.
I'm a skip tracer, Mrs. McGuinn. I work for the bail bondsman who put up your bond.
I said I'm on for the money.
Why the hell didn't you just have your husband and some of his friends put up the money?
Up to you for the show.
Look, if you're taking me back, let's get going. I can't take much more of this Elvis tribute.
I'm really getting ready now. Go get on, don't you?
It's like an action comedy, and Pink Cadillac missed the mark. Eastwood stars, and he's hunting down a woman played by Bernadette Peters on the run from neo-Nazis, all while driving the title Pink Cadillac. It's a mix of comedy and action, but it didn't quite work, and like I said, it's one of Eastwood's more overlooked 80s films. Speaking of overlooked films in the 80s, The Golden Child with Eddie Murphy.
It is his destiny to save the Golden Child. He is the chosen one.
If I'm the chosen one, how come I'm freezing while you're sitting in a warm movie theater? I'm going back to LA and kicking somebody's behind.
This is coming off Beverly Hills Cop. Eddie Murphy was at the top of his game, and The Golden Child tried to mix action comedy and mysticism, with Murphy playing a detective tasked with protecting a mystical child from dark forces. It was a financial success, sorta, but wasn't beloved like his other films from that era, and it's been largely forgotten over time. Number 9, Red Scorpion. Dolph Lundgren, fresh off Rocky IV, I Will Break You. He starred as the Red Scorpion, an action-packed Cold War thriller. Lundgren played a Soviet soldier sent to infiltrate a rebel group in Africa, only to switch sides and take down his own government. The movie had plenty of explosions and gunfights, but it failed to stand out among other Cold War action flicks. You will lose. Finally, there's Above the Law from 1988. Before Hard to Kill and Under Siege made him a household name, Steven Seagal's first starring role was Above the Law.
Freeze, motherfucker!
Come on, man, not today, please. Put the gun away.
All right, who else wants some?
Hey, you're destroying the image of my place, man.
In that film, he plays a tough ex-CIA agent turned Chicago cop who uncovers a deadly conspiracy. The movie introduced audiences to Seagal's signature Aikido fighting style, but it didn't get the same recognition as his later hits. There you have it, 10 forgotten action films from the 80s that starred some of the biggest action heroes of all time. Whether they were overshadowed by bigger blockbusters, didn't quite click with audiences, or just got lost in the shuffle, these movies still have their moments of glory, I guess. Which ones on the list do you remember? What did I miss? Any other 80s action flicks that deserve a mention? Let me know in the comments, and if you love deep dives into 80s and 90s nostalgia, don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow for more. Thanks for watching. See you next time.
Sha-la-la-la.